Just anthro, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The 1AC is an attempt to discover legitimate forms of violence. Restrictions not only regulate but also authorize certain acts of violence as legal. However, this evaluation of legal forms of killing is based on juridical ordering of life, which determines which lives the law is supposed to protect and which lives can be killed. This hierarchy between good and bare life sits at the foundation of the species world that we participate in every day of our lives. The animal other is the epitome of bare life, which is rendered expendable in the eyes of the law. The problem isn't the lack of law, but law's distinction itself between bare and good life. This anthropocentric guarantees continued destruction and non-human manifest in the sixth great extinction of our planet. They consider our best impact evidence, which indicates that it means that 45 billion animals die per year on this continually creating system. Anthropocentrism is worse than the extinction of the human race right now, because there's only 6 million people right now for inferior utilitarian camps, but there's also a value to life language in the system that they saw the war. They only saw a system of war in which the animal lives in a state of perpetual genocide and a state of a perpetual concentration camp, which can never have an experience, which is the reason why you must vote ethically, because there's no value in life in the animal. Now there's no offense. The system isn't inoperative and trending towards its own destruction. The only question is to collapse or let it collapse or cling to it. This process intent we must rest from all apparatus possibly used to the capture to achieve by subtraction themselves, which leads them in jam to not for state the apparatus dials and prepare the device by updating all positive content that life they go running empty, capable of only inflicting death or doing nothing. This is what operates in the field of crisis will manifest an honorable imperative of the bipolitical apparatus. The evidence starting with the First World War, nation states were bound to disappear. Bipolitical machine has done all the work empty on positive forms of life that have gotten burned bare life that rather than reforming apparatus, we should leave the self-destruction and reclaim bare life. They feed out of the frame of debate. They say the best course of action. That means the alternative is still compatible, because it is a course of action that we have to refuse to operate within the laws of sovereign as a sovereign system, which means even if we don't mean our framework arguments, you still have to evaluate the alternative, because it is a course of action. Now, our interpretation debate is deciding creating intellectual advocacy. The question should be whether we as individuals should advocate for legal positive or alternative. The only difference between their framework and our framework is that we acknowledge that it's only us in this round that we are calling for a certain action. We have to recognize the debate says there's a framing issue. Our criticism proves that there's a real implications to our ethical advocacy that awaits, but forcing those in this debate to alter their anthropocentric behavior, we're the only team that potential to create tangible change that can directly save lives by forcing them to become vegan as well and forcing them to be able to actually confront the anthropocentrism that they guarantee in their lives. That is a real world impact that we can provide. Now we have multiple internal to that impact. First is legitimate violence. The sole focus on positive law glosses over the ethical concepts behind law. However, the two are inseparable. Before we make policies over what legitimate violence is, we make formulations which lives are valuable, which our lives are not. Their sole focus on policy makes it impossible to interrogate or understand the broader underpinnings of law that's coaching and not. The language of law are linked to the language of law. The war might be said to illegal or illegal displays acts in which social meaning of war are organized in particular ways. The language of war contains speech of war at the foundation of law resides in war against the non-human. Considering to make the law understand the rules, such perspective is narrow. The law needs to be understood more than sets of limited law. The law denotes a broader character that includes positive law as well. Ethical conception justice is clear in German, whereby rect denotes a broader ethical category. Just refers to positive law. Law war contains arguments about what constitutes legitimate violence. The question of what constitutes legitimate violence lies at the center of relationship. The law of war makes no other thinking answers the question what may be killed, including who may be killed. And B's point is agency. Their understanding of power exclusively focused on the macro level, which ignores how power constitutes in every day of our lives. We must understand that ours, how the spaces we occupy can shape power and should affect change. As Decade 12, slaughterhouse functions as technology and power. A unifying theme is believed not only in localized institution of power by which animals' oppression occurs, but also in possibly instability in these regimes of resistance, so that scholars are eager to adopt analysis of power, but not only in legal institutions, but also how we speak. The spaces we inhabit in the cultural practice constitute our power to power identity. The relations exert epistemological impact. Representation classifies some central and others peripheral. Mark and proliferal. We do not move the one. We do not move to see the one. The one NC is a critique of law. They should be able to defend legalism, especially this is a law topic. The fairness claims are not sovereign. It's a highly specific impact term. Using framework to get rid of the critique would be equivalent to letting them use theory to spike out an impact term, which is fairness. They misunderstand our framework. They can weigh the affirmative. They simply have to win the internal link that their demand for legal positive actually produces change. Their framework is only unfair by wanting one affirmative to magically pass the plan and bypass every single question whether individuals can actually foster any real world change, which means it just decimates the ability for actual activism. They made the activism claim in the 1AC, and you should stick them to it, because they have to prove why their activism is actually relevant to making change outside of this round happen. Any opportunity cost. This is an opportunity cost. The alternative is saying screw the law in the status quo. We need to reformulate politics. That's an opportunity cost with engaging the law. Now the alternative debate. They say that the absent institutions, the alt is useless. The fact they are conflating institutions and organizations with the government itself proves the fact that they only think in a government-centric, law-centric lines. I'll explain the alternative here. The alternative is an absolute refusal of sovereign's right to draw lines between bare and good life. The alternative is not a call for anarchy. It's a public rejection of the system of sovereign's violence. Refusing anthropocentrism is a necessary starting point for breaking down the logic behind bipolitical violence. By refusing to operate within or recognize law's notions between bare and good life, we're able to render that law inoperative. And it is try or die for the negative. The standpoint of the animal epitomizes the failure of status quo politics. Democratic politics, like the affirmative tries to purport for the whole globe, has only worked to further dominance of the human. The only thing you utopian is believing that democracy and the rule of law, which is something the 1AC takes a huge stance for, can solve the non-human. That's culture on 8. There is similarity between democracy and totalitarianism, uniting the investment in politics and political machine and seeking to separate animal life from political human life. Even democratic regimes maintain safeguards and democracies are far from successful in subject. They create the conditions where possibly such consequence. This comes from the forced instances where the rule of law is suspended. Such states' extension are becoming the rule. The task facing us today is not to reform or expansion of democracy, but creating an altogether different form of political life. The government offers us overwhelming accounts of limits of democracy. This discussion we're limited to anthropocentric politics. I would argue criticisms are very difficult to determine who among activists working in defense of animal rights believes that humanism, democracy, human rights are a sine qua non ethics. Even if one were to describe animal rights within democratic neighborhoods, such gestures can only appear tragical in life, and the massive institutionalized abuse that democracy encourages and many support of animal abuse goes further. Activists in the U.S. who engage in sabotage and name of stopping animal abuse are not just criticized but are placed on the top of the list of domestic terrorists, FBI, and subject to prison. The project that government would follow entirely new human-animal relations. While government thought is labeled utopian from the perspective of an animal, the tables can be turned. Anyone who argues existing politics can be reformed is clearly the utopian thinker. For what scientists hope do we have that democracy can be reformed to include the consideration to being about the non-human? This is an overall critique of a democracy, because democracy only helps those who are considered good life, who are considered within the law, because it excludes all those outside the law. That is what we were critiquing about the law, the exclusion between inside and outside of the possibility of the law. They say organizations are good. Yet again, you're conflating government with the only organization. We are in an organization right now that we need to talk about our own power relationships within these things, which is the reason the alternative acts as a solvency. We just impact turn that the government is the only form of organization. In fact, it's a bad organization because it's based on the fact that those only inside the law can help. The app is an example of trying to include people in the law. It is trying to say that we can find rule of the whole. When I see rhetoric is saying rule of law can prevent extinction, as if we put law some places that means everyone is better off. No, those outside the law, which is an inherent part of the law itself, are excluded. Now the permutation does not make any sense. The whole critique is I'm founding the idea that faith in legal positivism is bad. The attempt to regulate sovereign power through law simply adds the veil of legitimacy to sovereign authority, make exceptional violence appear legal. Debates about where the line should be drawn refer to the fact that it must be drawn fire. Instead, the alternative is to refuse to recognize sovereign power itself, subtract ourselves from the system which gives sovereign authority in the first place. The inclusion of legal reform negates any positive value of the alt because they're operating within the law. The permutation no longer refuses to acknowledge sovereign authority. It is going within sovereign authority. They don't misunderstand our new legal system. This is a legal system not based off of force of law, not based off democracy, not based off those outside of law. It's one in which the law is only a site of ethics, as our coach Evan talks about. It's not any law that they find recognizable. Now, they say Islamophobia. This is exactly the problem. They do not solve Islamophobia. As all these arguments prove why the affirmative has a misunderstanding about how sovereign power operates. Law is never neutral. The first safeguards are meaningless. By rendering them individuals bare life, the sovereign can act with impunity. All of our arguments are critique of law. The one and will explain solvency arguments by what law can never be overturned. We have multiple terms, case arguments, but the whole critique that 1AC is a reason you should be skeptical of law. Despite Hampton, despite Bowman-Dean, many other court rulings that were supposed to guarantee habeas corpus right, those have never worked because the law is constantly redrawn. Their Islamophobia argument is exactly our point. Those racialized non-human bodies are put outside the law, and the law can be suspended at any second, meaning that the president never has to choose to apply the law, just like he did for Jose Pandilla or Alawaki. That's Timeline 9. State racism is introduced, several life reform that get killed. State story towards racialized danger ought to be defeated. Representation of Iraqi Afghans are threatening the ability to govern themselves, help legitimize interventions. Mark's difference about subject value law includes sovereign power about what forms like to be excluded. Rich, you will finish that card. One, see the perm double bind doesn't make sense because you operate outside of law. Now the alternative doesn't solve the card, doesn't make sense. We're not saying that you should be one with nature. We're just saying that you respect the non-human. This is about a Buddhism argument, which we're not making. They say war in turns. You never access or solve any possibility of war in the first place. And if war means human size, we have to accept the possibility that ontological condition is good. They say no root cause. We never say the root cause of your violence came. We just say there is a big form of violence that is happening every day in our life. They say it reifies anthro. Look, we've never made a claim of what ontological conditions of non-human are good. This argument assumes that we only say these certain people should be included in a non-anthropocentric sense. We say that you should disavow the non-human-human binary in totality, which means you shouldn't value an object such as a rock or a human more than a rock. That is exactly our argument. Now, their feminism argument doesn't make any sense either. We're not saying you should refuse your identity. I'll have Rishi explain that in a second. Their feminism argument is it's like basically they think that we should be one with nature. We don't refuse human identity that you understand. Do you get that? That is just profound. No. I'm trying to think what. Oh, they say repurpose anthropocentrism. You can answer that, right? 19 seconds.
Good.
Should the Uyghurs be held at Guantanamo?
What?
Should the Uyghurs be held at Guantanamo?
Obviously, no one should be indefinitely detained. If you're asking that question, you obviously don't understand what we're critiquing. We're critiquing the idea that you should use the law to solve problems with the law.
Your argument is that bringing people into the law is bad. At the point where these people are already encapsulated in a legal regime, though, like,
But
how is there any uniqueness to that?
you don't solve the fact. You can incorporate more people in the law, but you refuse to recognize the fact that the law is an illusory thing that can be suspended at any moment. Just like the fact that we have this...
Yeah, and it's been suspended in circumventing Boumediene, and the plan stops that from happening.
It's exactly that you think the plan could stop the problem with law. We've had an epistemological indictment of law, saying that the law can never protect you from lawlessness because the two are interchangeable. The sovereign decides when to apply law and when to not apply law.
What does the alternative do about law?
To refuse to operate within sovereign power. We're saying step back from our current form of politics.
Then how do we have any form of law, or is there any?
So, like, it's a form of law that doesn't have any force, is a term that Agamben uses. So it wouldn't be laws in the sense that you understand laws. Laws wouldn't be like this government deciding what everyone should do, and if you don't conform with this notion of what law is, you're persecuted.
Can you give me an example?
So, like, what politics would look like, it wouldn't really operate under, like, are you a citizen of this government, or are you a citizen of this government? It would just be an ethical form of living in, like, community. Like,
Okay.
your arguments about organizations being good is exactly alternative solvency argument. We all live in organizations. There are organizations outside the government.
I want to talk about this disregarding citizens argument, because I feel like you're shifting the focus of this a bit. At the point where the act is a ruling that says that non-citizens should not be indefinitely detained at Guantanamo, how does that make any sense in the context
So
of
you
the
don't get rid of the idea that law only,
Sure, we
operates on the citizen, non-citizen
Sure,
divide.
we may not get rid of the broader structure, but why is that bad?
If you don't get rid of the broader structure, you're just enforcing the system
Enforcing,
more.
we make it weaker in one instance. Why should perfect be the enemy of the good?
Well, it's because alternative offers an actual, like, possibility of changing the system overall. So,
Would
like,
the
I would
alternative
say
result
this,
in releasing those people?
hopefully as an end goal, but obviously we're just people in this debate round.
Okay. What is your strategy for actually changing things in this debate round?
Well, one would be to force y'all to confront your anthropocentric behavior that you participate in every day of your life.
Okay.
That's
What about the anthropocentric behavior you participate in?
We all do, despite the fact that we're both vegan. We all participate in anthropocentric behavior that we all need to critically reflect on and try to minimize that as much as possible.
Could law be repurposed to stop anthropocentrism?
Is
it acceptable to
like
regulate
in our
things
current,
like murder?
Our
or
Calcera
animal
card
murder?
is a really good card that says democracy can never really solve the non-human animal because of this anthropocentric tendency. We only see the non-human as an object. It can never
What stops
solve.
people from killing endangered species?
Excuse me?
What stops people from killing endangered species?
For them to value the non-human.
Okay.
If they were to value the non-human.
That is
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay. Where's the flash drive at?